The FNCS format is fucking confusing, but don't you worry, you TikTok ADHD kids. The old man has got you covered and will explain exactly how you qualify to the FNCS this season. Now, the FNCS starts with 2 open qualifiers, which starts January 26th, and for major regions, this goes on for 4 sessions in total. In order to play the FNCS this season, you'll need to hit Platinum Division in Ranked. Now, in round number 1, this is your open qualification system for the FNCS. You have to place amongst the top 2,000 teams in order to qualify into the next round. In round 2, the top 1,000 teams will go on to round 3, and then in round 3, the top 250 teams will go on to round number 4. But in round number 4 now, this is where we're entering new territory because we don't actually have an FNCS weekly final anymore. Again, in this round number 4, teams will play 10 games in total over 3 hours, and then their placement will be noted for the series points leaderboard. Now, this happens twice only this time instead of the usual 3 weeks we usually have for the FNCS, and then we're done with the open qualification system and probably for most of the Fortnite competitive user base. Each placement in the FNCS is attached to a points value system, also known as the series points. So if you place, for example, in round number 4, first out of the top 250 teams, well, then you get 625 points in total. In order to gain these points, you have to guarantee making it into round number 4. Essentially, if you don't make round 4 once, your FNCS is pretty much over, except if you maybe place within the top 10 or the top 15 in the second week of the open qualifiers. After the 2 weeks of the FNCS are done, the total series points that you have across the 2 weeks will be added up and you'll be put onto a leaderboard, also known as the series points leaderboard. Now, the top 250 teams on that leaderboard will move on now into something what is called the semifinals, also known as the new heat system of the FNCS. Essentially, to qualify to the FNCS Grand Finals, you have to qualify through what is now the upper semifinals, and this happens in multiple rounds. Now, strap in, this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So in these semifinals, there are upper and lower semifinals. The first round of semifinals starts with the upper semifinals round number 1, where they will take the top 50 teams from that previous series points leaderboard and they'll put them into a single lobby with 5 games in total. Now, this is going to be your classic reboot round system tournament where each game winner will move on to the FNCS Grand Finals, so then we have 5 teams qualifying to Grands. Even though the objective of the session is to win games, you will still get normal points for placements and eliminations. So at the end of those 5 games, the 6th to 25th teams on the leaderboard, so the teams that don't win a game, will move on to what is now called the upper semifinals round number 2. And everybody else on the leaderboard will be demoted down to the lower semifinals round 2. Now, in these lower semifinals, that is basically where you can get demoted from the FNCS. So going back to those initial series point leaderboard qualifiers, 51st to 250th on that leaderboard will play the lower semifinals round number 1, where it's essentially an open style qualification system with 10 games and 3 hours in total. The teams in this lower semifinals who place 1st to 30th will now join the 6th to 25th placing teams of the previous upper semifinals round 1 in the upper semifinals round number 2. The 31st to 205th team in this open qualifier will stay in the lower bracket and move on to lower bracket round number 2. And finally, the bottom 45 teams of this open qualifier will be eliminated from the FNCS, and their entire FNCS journey will end right there. Now, we will do it again, but in round number 2. The upper bracket semis round 2, the 6th to the 25th team from the upper semifinals round number 1, plus the top 30 teams we just had from the lower semifinals round 1, and they'll play 5 games in total again, where each winner will qualify to the FNCS Grand Finals. Again, placement matters in this round, where the teams that are in 6th and 25th will stay in that upper bracket and will have to play round 3 to try and qualify to Grand Finals again. And then the bottom 25 teams will again be demoted down to the lower bracket, this time round number 3. Now we have the lower bracket semifinals round number 2, which is going to be played, where we took those 31st to 205th teams from the previous open round 1 qualifier, plus the bottom 25 teams of the first upper bracket semifinals. So the teams who place top 50 in the series points leaderboard don't really have much of an advantage if they do badly in that first debut round qualifier. They're back into the open system and they have to try to qualify again regardless of their series points leaderboard placement. Again, they'll play an open qualifier with 10 games and 3 hours in total. And again, the top 30 teams from that open qualifier will qualify into the upper semifinals round number 3. And now finally, every other team in this qualifier who isn't in the top 30 will be fully eliminated from the FNCS. So it doesn't matter if you place top 50 in the series points leaderboard. You could have even placed first across all of the weeks of the FNCS, and you can get knocked out right now and not even qualify the grand finals. So that's around 200 teams that we're losing at this stage of the tournament, which is going to be a heartbreak for a lot of these teams, and we'll see a lot of big names potentially be eliminated. So now we're finally at the end of it. We're in the last round of the semifinals, round number 3, and we start off with the upper bracket semis. Here, the 6th to the 25th team from the upper bracket semis round 2, plus those top 30 teams of the lower semis round 2 qualifier will play only 3 games in total. Now this is probably one of the easiest qualifiers by far to make it into grands. All you have to do is play 3 games and place top 25 and you have made it into the FNCS Grand Finals. Finally, the bottom 25 teams of that specific round will play the lower bracket semifinals round number 3 alongside the 26th to 50th team of the upper semis round number 2. And again, you'll play another 3 games in total, but this time only the top 15 will qualify to the FNCS Grand Finals. So this is essentially the last chance qualifier of this season, and then the FNCS is completely done and finished. So now we have 10 teams from the reboot type style of the upper semis round 1 and round number 2, plus 25 teams from upper semifinals round number 3, and finally 15 teams from the lower bracket semifinals round 3 that have now qualified to the FNCS Grand Finals. After 8 sessions of opens and 6 rounds of semifinals, we finally have our 50 FNCS Grand Finalists. Now, this format is a little bit confusing, but actually not horrible in the grand scheme of things for the FNCS qualification. There's multiple ways to qualify. It's essentially one of the easiest FNCS qualification systems we've had in a long time. It gives you multiple chances to qualify even if you get unlucky. Now, of course, the FNCS Grand Finals are going to be qualifications to the FNCS Major Global Championship. So we just had one in Copenhagen. We're going to do it all again this year with major regions like EU having first and second qualified to the LAN, and every other region will have only first place qualified to the LAN for the first FNCS. In the second FNCS of this year, first to fifth of EU will qualify to the LAN, and then first and third of NA Central will qualify to the LAN, and finally in the final FNCS of this year, first to 10th place in EU and NA will qualify to the LAN, was first to third for Brazil, Asia, Middle East qualifying, and first and second for OC qualifying. And then we have our 50 teams for the FNCS Global Championships, which is a reduction from last year where we had 75 teams qualifying. Now we only have 50. Now, in those FNCS Grand Finals, the point system has also been changed slightly, with the format now offering a 1.5 times points multiplier in the second day of the FNCS, which essentially means that each win goes from 65 points in total, which is your usual point system for finals, to 100 points in total, and each elimination goes from 4 points to 6 points in total on the final day. Essentially, Epic Games' way of making it more exciting for the FNCS Grand Finals for some reason. Alongside that, as you saw, we actually had less people qualifying for the Global Championships, and that's probably because of the prize pool changes. We've gone from $10 million in 2023 to $7.675 million in 2024, and that means that we have a effective prize pool change for a lot of regions. Mainly Brazil and Asia have been reduced by 40% in total, which is huge. EU only has a reduction of 3%, and NA Central actually has an increase of 8% in their prize pools. And then Middle East is the biggest benefit here, with 19% of the prize pool being increased. OCE And the Global's prize pool then has also then been pretty much halved from $4 million to $2 million in total, which is a little bit unfortunate, but at the same time, it's still going to be a major tournament, and it's still going to be super, super exciting to watch, but going to be a little bit less prizing for the pros coming out to a LAN. Last but not least, with the news for the FNCS, of course, Siphon has been removed. That Siphon will no longer return to the Fortnite competitive scene at all in 2024. More than likely will never come back to this game ever again. That is going to be the end of Siphon in Fortnite competitive as we know it. Unfortunately, Epic has put their foot down. They've said enough is enough, and they're not going to bring it back. There's no more hope for it, unfortunately. Sounds like classic Epic Games to me. Subscribe.